Cry of Fear is one of my favorite games of all time. There will come a day I will make a complete analysis of the game and everything that happens in it, just as I will do the same for Afraid of Monsters. But that's beside the point of this video. The point here is that Team Psyscalar is the developer behind the making of Cry of Fear and Afraid of Monsters Director's Cut. A small team of indie devs led by a man called Andreas Ronberg that ended up making some of the best indie horror games ever made. One day I was looking over Team Psyscalar's YouTube channel and found something that called my attention. What is this? C17H2702? A music video? Let's listen to it. Maybe it's a track used in Cry of Fear or something of those sorts. And upon the first time I listened to it, I was in love. I searched for more information about the song and discovered that it was released by a band called Intig, featured in an album titled Utfryst, and that the band had released a few more albums beside it. Intig was a small band and its frontman was called Andreas from Sweden. Andreas, the mind behind Cry of Fear and Afraid of Monsters, is the same guy behind the song C17, H27 and O2, and the frontman of this band called Intig. C17, H27 and O2 blew me off. I fell in complete love with that song and decided to listen to the album it was released on. The album, as I mentioned previously, is titled Utfryst, or Frozen in Swedish. Curiously, I discovered that Intig is an atmospheric black metal band, or for those more degenerate ones, a DSPM band. I personally don't like to categorize Intig as a DSPM band, because from my conception, whereas Intig feels personal and relatable for the most time, as we will see further in this video, the little I listened to other DSPM bands gave me the impression they were very invasive and just depressing without a reason for being depressing. For that reason, I like to consider Intig an atmospheric black metal band, but in moments such as with the title track for Utfryst or C17, as I will be referring to it for most of the video, it is straight up what I like to call soft rock, but with a very emotional focus to it. Going back to Utfryst itself, I would just say that this is one of my favorite albums of all time. I just love it. I feel the emotion and heart that was put in this music, and I relate to all of that pain. Just like back how I felt empathy for Simon in Cry of Fear. Talking about the other songs in this album, they're mostly atmospheric black metal as one would imagine, but with a cleaner sound and good production. The ones that stand out in my opinion are Gossamer Dreams, Lost, or whatever the correct way to pronounce it is, the 7th song I'm talking about, and then the last 2 tracks, In the Stream of Killing Everything and Life Wasted. Those 2 closing tracks are powerful, especially the last one, which for some reason reminds me a lot of the song Alive from Chronicles the Forest. Now, as for the rest of the band's discography, being fully honest, I feel like they were a bit forced. This part of the video might be controversial, but I don't want to lie here. Empty, the debut, has a very similar sound to Utfryst, but whereas that one I can relate and understand the pain, this one feels more, how to put it, shallow, too much teenager emo. I mean, look at the titles and you might understand what I mean. I Wish I Wasn't Awake, Worthless Being. I'm not saying that the music here sounds bad, but in comparison to Utfryst, there's something lacking here, but I can't quite describe what it is that is missing. The same thing goes for Modfeld, not an album but an EP, which I think is the one released by the band that sounds the most like black metal from their discography, but also is quite a forgettable release, I will admit. And then we have Destiny, which I think is the most unrelatable emo music the band has ever done. Although most of it is instrumental and sounds good enough, I mean, I enjoy instrumentals. But the problem here is that we have parts like those present in Selvmordstanker, which has that girl narrating and such throughout the song, I don't like it whatsoever. I think it sounds very forced and unnatural. But that's just what I think. Maybe I'm being a complete douche and completely unreasonable with these other releases, but it's my honest opinion on them. So, going back to something good, Utfryst. I always thought C17 was its best song and the band's best creation as well. How I wish they were to release an entire album that sounds just like that one song. Oh, wait, they did exactly that. Vilsen, Swedish for Lost, came out on April 20th, 2024, and man, it's hard for me to choose what is the best album of the year. Vilsen by Intig or The Last Will and Testament by Opeth. It's so hard to pick one, you have no idea. Vilsen is Intig's most unique release. They shifted away from the atmospheric black metal sound a lot and went toward a more psychedelic rock and soft rock direction. This whole album sounds like C17, but whereas that was a single song, this whole album feels like an extension of it into a complete album. And that's why I love this release. Again, as with Utfryst, I find this entire album relatable in some way or another. Again, I can feel the emotion and the pain in this release. It's something very close to home, let's say that. Ego Death, the introduction, is very crazy and psychedelic. Samsara and title track Vilsen are very heavy and go back to the band's black metal inspirations. And then we have the purely emotional songs like 10 Years Later and many others. Towards the second side, starting with Lycopiller, all the songs that follow it are incredible and I like them all. Fragile, Psilocybin, Hop are all great songs, but the one I feel is the best one and even better than C17 is Let Go. An instrumental, Let Go is its title. That one sentence sounds incorrect, but whatever. When I listen to the song, all that I think about is, what am I letting go? Some things in life you really need to just leave behind, they're not worth pursuing, while others, no matter how hard you try, you will never get them. You will never be able to achieve them. In both cases, you just need to let go. This title and just thinking about the music itself and the infinite possible meanings this could have is just one of the most profound things I've ever seen. And those are my thoughts on Intig.